Welcome, everyone, to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series, and thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be talking about mentoring youth with disabilities. I am Cheryl Howard-Neal, Director of Programs and Partnerships with Mentor Illinois, and I'll be facilitating the conversation. Let's get started. This webinar is a part of the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series, which is funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention through the National Mentoring Resource Center and facilitated in partnership with Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. These webinars would not be possible without the planning team, which includes the mentoring partnerships shown on this slide. In addition to the webinar series, the National Mentoring Resource Center provides resources for mentoring practitioners. At the end of this webinar, we'll provide more details about how you can access this free support. Before we get started, I wanted to share some housekeeping information. In 1 week, you'll receive an email with information about how to download a copy of these slides and view the webinar recording. You can also access this information directly by going to Mentor's website in the next week. And to continually improve this series, we're looking for your input. A short survey will pop up as you exit the webinar. Please take just a few minutes to give us your feedback. We would greatly appreciate it. And we want this to be a participatory experience, so please use the question box to ask questions throughout the webinar. And many thanks to Benji Thurber from the Vermont Mentoring Partnership, who will be queuing up questions to share with panelists during the Q&A portion of the webinar. We may not get to all the questions because there are several hundred of you on the webinar, but we will do our very best. The questions that we share with the panelists are generally ones that broaden or deepen the conversation. First, we'd like to get a sense of who was with us today, so we have 3 short poll questions. First question is, what is your experience level in the mentoring field? Beginner, experienced, or expert? And we'll give you just a second to click one of those. Just waiting for our results. So it looks like we have 28% as beginner, 66% experienced, and 6% expert. So we have lots of experienced folk, and that is great. That is wonderful. And thank you for the beginners just starting this journey. We appreciate that. And then one more question, or 2 more. We have 1 more next. Second poll is, what is your role in the mentoring field? Are you a practitioner, researcher, technical assistance provider, a funder, or maybe other? And if you are other, if you can type into the chat box what your other is and how you're affiliated with the field. We would love that, just to get a sense of who's with us. And we'll give you just another minute to log your response. And the results, let's see, we have 51% practitioner, 1% researcher, 13% technical assistance provider. We don't have any funders. And then we have about 35% other. So yeah, we're really curious about what the other might be, like where you fall and what you do in the mentoring field. And 51% practitioner, so that's excellent. That is great. Thank you for that. Then we have 1 more for you. Do you currently operate a mentoring program that serves youth with disabilities? Yes or no? and we'll give you a minute to respond. And it looks like, oh, okay, so we're evenly matched. So about 52% yes and 48% no. So this is good. So some folks are already doing the work, and some would like to get more information and maybe start a program. So that is great. So we're hopeful that everything that we provide today will be applicable to everyone on the line. So thank you. So on to our panelists. So we have some experts in the field, and I would like to introduce them to you now. So our first panelists are from PYD, which is Partners for Youth with Disabilities. We have Janelle C. Thomas, Director of National Initiatives, and Kristen Humphrey, Mentoring Director. So Janelle is passionate about empowering organizations to become inclusive environments that support youth of all abilities to reach their full potential. She has over 18 years of experience in nonprofit management, including at the executive and board levels. She has authored or co-authored best practices for mentoring youth with disabilities, national implications for mentoring youth with disabilities, and expanding access and inclusion for youth with disabilities, an inclusion guide for America's youth programs. And Kristen Humphrey oversees the Mentor Match program at PYD to ensure that the program goals are met. A strong proponent of mentoring, she has been involved with mentoring for over a decade, beginning with her role as a volunteer mentor. She is a member of the National Mentoring Resource Stakeholder Council and the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. She has worked with youth with disabilities for the past 9 years and founded a club at Connecticut College that facilitated group mentoring for siblings of youth with disabilities. Our next panelist is Access Living, the Disability Justice Mentoring Collective. We have Alicia Nightingale, Program Coordinator of the Disability Justice Mentoring Collective, the DJMC, and the Youth Information and Education Leadership Development Workshops, or YIELD, at Access Living in Chicago. She has over 10 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, working with youth, people with disabilities, homeless populations, and victims of domestic violence. She facilitates mentoring groups and workshops for youth with disabilities to strengthen mentoring relationships, build youth leadership skills, and promote social justice. Our next panelist is a parent and also the founder of Teachability, Cindy Montgomery, parent and founder of Teachability, an organization dedicated to developing innovative programs and strategies to lead people with disabilities into work. She has worked as an operations associate at Morgan Stanley, assistant director of student services in the financial markets, and trading graduate program at Illinois Institute of Technology, and as a regional sales manager for the Institute of Financial Education. Cindy also sits on the Women's Board of the Children's Home and Aid Society of Illinois, and is a participant in the Illinois Partners in Policymaking program. And me, I am Cheryl Howard-Neal, Director of Programs and Partnerships in Mentor, Illinois. I've worked in the field for about 25 years of service in the nonprofit sector, working with mentoring and after-school programs, managing relationships with community, faith-based, and corporate volunteers. I facilitate trainings and workshops around the state and provide technical assistance to mentoring programs on best practices. So let's dive in. While the practice and benefits of mentoring youth has been widely endorsed and researched for many years, the conversation has not always included youth with disabilities. This is problematic because we have found that youth with disabilities are half as likely as their peers without disabilities to participate in post-secondary education, and that young adults with disabilities are 3 times likelier to live in poverty as their peers without a disability. We also know that navigating the often rocky road from adolescence to adulthood is challenging, even for the most capable of youth. Now imagine having a physical or developmental disability added to that. Mentors have the ability to level the playing field for youth with disabilities by providing support, encouragement, friendship, and another lens in which to see the world, a world that sometimes forgets to be inclusive. It is my pleasure to introduce Janelle and Kristen from Partners for Youth with Disabilities to help us unpack this topic and tell us about their organization. If you have questions for Janelle and Kristen, please type them into the chat box and we will tee them up at the end of their presentation. Janelle and Kristen, take it away.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. This is Janelle Thomas. As Cheryl said, I work for PYD, which is Partners for Youth with Disabilities, and I'm here with my colleague, Kristen. And I want to start by talking about the prevalency of disability, that 1 in 5 people in the U.S. has a disability at any point in time. And disability is a characteristic that cuts across all other demographics. So no matter what your race, your socioeconomic status, your age, your religion, your sexual orientation, disability cuts across all of those, and really it's one of the largest, if not the largest, minority groups in the country. And I share that because sometimes we underestimate the number of youth in our programs, or just underestimate disability in general. Next slide, please. Thank you. And part of the reason for that underestimation is that not all disabilities look like what you're seeing on the left-hand part of the slide, which represents a person in a wheelchair. Some disabilities are what are considered non-apparent, or you might heard them referred to as hidden. And so examples of those might be ADHD, learning disabilities, mental health, a whole host of disabilities that without disclosure or without a person telling you, you wouldn't know that that person had a disability. The disabilities on the left, where somebody uses a wheelchair or somebody is blind and uses a cane, those are more obvious, and so you automatically know that that's a youth, who has a disability. But oftentimes we won't know the youth that have disabilities and haven't told us. And part of the reason it's really important that I share this with you is that many of you, when the question was asked, do you serve youth with disabilities, or do you have a program that serves youth with disabilities, about 50% said no. And I would argue that if you are working in any capacity in a mentoring program or organization, you are serving youth with disabilities. They just may not have disclosed to you. And so they could have a hidden disability. And so what we like to do at PYD is develop our programs and our programming in a way that is inclusive, so that whether or not somebody has a disability or whether or not they've disclosed to us, we still are able to serve them well and engage them well. And oftentimes in my role, I do a lot of presentations and a lot of work around the country supporting youth programs that are seeking to be more inclusive. And there's a quote I love to share that says, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. And so when you look around your program and you see the youth in the room, are the youth with disabilities dancing? Is everybody dancing together, or do you see some young people who are off to the side? And maybe you're looking at those young people and seeing behavioral challenges or other things going on, and you're interpreting them from that lens instead of thinking about, this young person might have a disability and I just don't know about it. Okay, next slide, please. So at PYD, our goal is to create a world where young people with disabilities can lead self-determined lives filled with dignity, pride, and purpose. And we define those in a couple of different ways. In terms of dignity, we really believe that dignity involves independence, self-determination, and self-advocacy. And these are important for all youth, but especially important for youth with disabilities because many times independence isn't something that they're able to have due to a whole host of reasons. And so we encourage that growth to independence. Pride means pride in self, self-confidence, and disability pride, understanding the history of disability and disability rights and embracing that part of who you are. And purpose. And purpose can mean many things for many different people, but we think education, employment, leadership opportunities, and healthy relationships can all lead and contribute to that sense of purpose. Okay, next, please. So Partners for Youth with Disabilities, we've been around for 33 years, and we were founded based on our founder who worked for a mentoring program, and she was getting phone calls from parents of youth with disabilities saying that nobody was accepting their kids into the program. And so she decided she was doing a mentoring program for girls who were, quote, at risk, and she decided to start allowing youth with disabilities to participate. And she would match them with mentors with similar disabilities. And the program it was the right program at the right time. There was such a need, and so it was very successful. And it has since grown. 33 years later, we provide a whole host of opportunities, including mentoring, community involvement, career exploration and career development, and inclusion services for organizations seeking to become more inclusive. And we believe that this creates a bridge that helps youth and young adults with disabilities cross over what can be a scary time of stigma, fear, and isolation. And so we provide most of our direct services in Massachusetts. We have a few things that are offered outside of Massachusetts, but from a national footprint, we actually offer inclusion training and program replication to organizations all over the country, and have done so with both mentoring organizations, museums, cultural centers, YMCAs, etc., because we find that organizations, specifically mentoring organizations, they want to be inclusive. They just maybe have some fear or a lack of training, or they just don't know where to start. And so we're here to help with that. And unfortunately, our founder I was talking about earlier, Regina Snowden, she started it because kids with disabilities were being turned away from traditional mentoring programs. And unfortunately, that's still happening. While many, many mentoring programs are really intentional about inclusion, we still receive referrals often from parents saying, my child was turned away because they had a disability. And that is really not only unfortunate, but it really is organizations' legal responsibility to do their very best to accommodate youth with disabilities. So that's what we're here for, is to help organizations and encourage them to do so. Okay, next slide. So all of us, I believe, get into this helping field, social services, youth development, because we believe that youth development opportunities make a difference, a real difference in the lives of all youth, and that we know a lack of those opportunities can lead to a lot of negative outcomes. And across the board, in almost every outcome you're looking at, youth with disabilities fare poorer than their peers without disabilities, and that includes educational, juvenile justice system outcomes, being bullied, being victims of abuse, and a whole host of other demographics. Now, that doesn't mean if you meet a person with a disability, they automatically have poor outcomes. But what it does mean is that people with disabilities, on average, are facing more challenges. And I especially like to point out that 80% of youth with learning disabilities are bullied at school. And that frequency is greater for youth who have disabilities that affect their appearance. And I share that because when a youth with a disability comes to your mentoring program, there is a good chance that they've been bullied at school. And so your mentors and your program might offer the safe place that they need to learn and thrive. And so I share that youth with disabilities should have access to youth development and mentoring opportunities in their communities, and that's where you all come in. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, PYD, we offer a whole host of development opportunities for youth, but we were founded based on our Mentor Match program in 1985, prior to the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was really the first civil rights legislation ever passed to protect people with disabilities. And I shared with you what our goal is. We base all of our mentoring activities on mentors' elements of effective practice. We think that's critical to have high standards. And then we supplement that with inclusive strategies and practices, which ensure that all youth are going to benefit and be fully engaged in the process. And PYD's models, we replicate them in a number of states, but most recently we have a federal grant through the Office on the Department of Labor Office on Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and we are able to replicate our model in 5 states. I want to just pause and see if Kristen has joined the call. I know she was having some challenges getting on, but if she's here, I'd love to pass the mic off to her, and if not, I'm going to continue. Okay, it seems like she's still having technical difficulties, so we're going to continue right on. Next slide, please. So there are some real standards that we do in our program. Much of them that you see here together are what you'd find in the elements of effective practice. But there are some additional things that we do that we think are very critical when you're serving youth with disabilities. And one is training. We train our staff, we train our mentors, all on inclusion strategies, on trauma-informed practice, based on what we said before about outcomes and bullying. And then we also make sure that we adhere to accessibility standards, both just physical accessibility standards, but also programmatic accessibility standards. And we also highly encourage mentors to work with youth on issues like self-disclosure, asking for an accommodation in a program or at work, and things that are really disability specific. And if you're a program, which I guess you are because you're here on this webinar and you're asking yourself, oh my gosh, I really want to make this happen in my program, but I don't even know where to start. at the end of the webinar, you will be shown some resources from PYD, and I want to highlight one of them. It's an inclusion self-assessment. It's free, funded by Liberty Mutual Foundation, and it's a quiz that you can take on an online platform that measures both you individually and your program in 5 different areas like accessibility, flexibility, teaching social skills, and allows you to see where your strengths and where your areas of growth are for disability inclusion. I would highly recommend doing this no matter what level your program is at, whether they serve people with disabilities all the time or whether it's new to you. Everybody has room for growth, and it's a free resource that is being offered, and I highly suggest for everybody to take advantage of it. We take it regularly at PYD, both our staff and our organization takes it every couple of years, and even us, even a group that has done this for 33 years, we are always learning and growing. So next slide. So thank you very much for listening to me share more about Partners for Youth with Disabilities. And if I can ever be of service, please do reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Janelle. That was great. Thank you. We appreciate that. And now we'd like to open it up to people on the line. Benji, what questions do you have for us?
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. So the first question I have is, would it be possible for you to talk about strategies for working with youth who have invisible or medical disabilities specifically?
Yes, I definitely can. But based on the fact that our time is limited here, I think I'm better sharing with you some of the resources that could give you a real in-depth look at that. There are a couple of free downloadable guides on at the end. You'll get a link to it, and one of those is called Disability Inclusion 101. I highly encourage every organization to start with that. It's really important that you have the all of your staff have the foundational knowledge and skills to be inclusive of all youth. When you're dealing with youth with hidden disabilities in a mentoring program, to me, there's two most important things you can do. One is develop your program in an inclusive way so that whether or not a young person discloses, you're ready for them because you've been proactive, and that guide has the inclusive strategies that you're looking for. And there's other guides as well. And you're going to want to design your programs using Universal Design for Learning, UDL. We have a free guide you can download about it, but you can also find tons of information online. Universal Design for Learning will allow you to design your program, everything to do with your mentoring program in a way that is accessible to youth with all kinds of disabilities, and really focus on those hidden disabilities like learning disabilities, mental health. So that first is the inclusive nature of your program and using UDL to ensure that it's accessible. The second is to be asking the right questions and having the right marketing material and having the right welcoming environment that will allow youth with hidden disabilities to disclose and to tell you what they need to be successful. So that can be looking at your marketing material and making sure that it's inclusive of youth with disabilities. It can be asking questions about accommodations ahead of time or how youth learn best ahead of time. Those questions should be asked to all youth, and then also having an inclusion statement so that parents and youth who are looking at your program can say, wow, they're talking to me. I'm welcomed here, and I feel comfortable disclosing my disability to this group. So those are just a couple of, strategies. But as I said, there's lots of free resources for you to download, and then always reach out to me if you'd like additional support, because this isn't this isn't an easy fix, but it is things through the proper steps. You can really get your program up to speed in a short amount of time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Judge Janelle. Hey, Benji, maybe one more question?
Sure. What are some specific trainings and resources that you offer mentors working with mentees with disabilities and helping them explore post-secondary opportunities and career options?
That is a really great question. We suggest that all mentors be trained in inclusion strategies and inclusive communication. So that's just across the board. All mentors should be having that, whether or not they're assigned to a youth with a disability or not, or matched with a youth with a disability or not. Because of what we said before, we don't always know who the youth with disabilities are. Secondarily, when you're specifically focused on career development and employment opportunities, there's a couple of areas of training that I think are critical if you're working with youth with mentors who work with youth with disabilities, and that is teaching mentors how to help their youth around self-disclosure. So how does a young person tell an employer that they have a mental health condition or they have a learning disability? And then how do we teach them how to ask for accommodations? Because accommodations are a legal right in the workforce. And the reason that's so critical is youth without disabilities don't really think, they don't have to be trained around that because they don't have to disclose a disability if there's not a disability, and they don't have to ask for their legally for an accommodation. And so in addition to just general employment readiness skills that we want mentors to help youth with, there are definitely those extra steps and extra training that we want mentors to have so that they're prepared to help mentees in that situation. That's a great question. We know that employment is so important to all youth, and especially youth with disabilities, because the unemployment rate is much higher for youth with disabilities. If this is something that's of special interest to you, feel free to reach out, because we have a lot of recorded webinars that we've done for mentors and around this topic, and I'd be happy to share them. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Janelle and Benji, and thanks to everyone who submitted questions. The links, we will have a resources page, and you will see that in just a little bit when we're done with the panelists, and we'll show the resources page. So we have a lot more information for you. So thank you for that. Now we're going to hear from Alicia, who runs the Disability Justice Mentoring Collective at Access Living. If you have questions for Alicia, please type them into the chat box, and we will tee them up at the end of her presentation. Alicia.
Hello, good afternoon. So I am here to talk about the Disability Justice Mentoring Collective, which is a mentoring program that I coordinate here at Access Living. It's for youth with disabilities aged 12 to 24 years old. Each youth is then paired up with a mentor for support and guidance. We're located at Access Living, which is an independent living still in Chicago, Illinois. Access Living and DJMC are committed to independence and inclusion of people with disabilities. Next slide, please. One of the main things that we focus on in our mentoring program is self-advocacy. Self-advocacy is specifically identifying as a person with a disability and advocating for oneself in the community. So these are skills that we teach in our program to the youth, in addition to autonomy, making choices, and individual rights. And next slide, please. So a lot of people ask what disability justice is. This is a common question that I get even from our volunteer mentors, regardless of their level of experience within the disability community. So disability justice is a movement that seeks equal rights and access for people with disabilities. But not only is it a movement that seeks equal rights, it's rooted from the lived experience of people with disabilities who have been largely excluded and silenced by mainstream media. Disability justice confronts ableism, and ableism is the belief and practice that people with disabilities are in some way inferior to non-disabled people. A big part of the disability justice movement includes parents and teachers, because they can help youth and empower them to make their own choices. Next slide, please. So at DJMC, we hold 2 group service community projects for our mentors and mentees annually. The first one is the Disability Pride Parade, and the second one is a volunteer service project that's selected by the youth. These events are beneficial for the youth because they have an opportunity to express their pride for who they are publicly with their peers, and then also engage and give back to the community through meaningful service projects. And you can see the pictures there. There's a picture of the Disability Pride Parade from last year, and then also a picture from one of our service projects where we went to the Anti-Cruelty Society and made toys for the cats and dogs and donated those. So DJMC encourages the one-on-one mentoring model. Our matches meet 2 times a month for a minimum of 4 hours a month. These can be a combo of both our monthly group sessions and one-on-one community outings. We provide a calendar of local events for the mentors and mentees that have a bunch of different outing ideas all over the Chicagoland area. And then we have a picture here of one of our matches, and then there's on the roof of Access Living, and then there's another picture of, you can see several people in it. That's at one of our group mentoring sessions that we have. So DJMC is unique in that we do provide a once a month 2-hour group mentoring session here at Access Living. It's on the second Saturday of each month. We provide lunch, guest speakers, and activities for the mentors and mentees to do together. We survey the youth ahead of time to provide information, so that way we can ensure that we're providing information on topics that they want to hear about. Frequently, we talk about disability identity, disability justice, health, fitness, career exploration, and activities to get to know one another, such as fun icebreaker activities. We also do arts and crafts projects. We've featured guest speakers from NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, different colleges throughout Chicago, adaptive sports organizations, social justice groups, and several community leaders who care about disability inclusion. So recruiting youth. The youth that are eligible to join our program are any youth that are aged 12 to 24 years old. They can have any disability, because we're a cross-disability organization, and they have to live within the city limits of Chicago. If the youth is under 18, then their parent must complete the paperwork with them. If they are over 18, then they can complete their own paperwork. Sometimes they may choose to have their parent there with them, even if they're over 18, as a support. All of the youth are voluntarily in the program because all of them want to learn more about disability identity, justice, and have the support of a caring mentor in their life. We recruit youth at high schools, resource fairs, all kinds of community events, churches, through political offices, and organizations that serve specifically people with disabilities. And next slide, please.
That is the next slide.
Oh, this is, I'm sorry. So recruiting mentors. If somebody wants to be a mentor in our program, they have to be 22 years old. They can have a disability or not, either way. They must commit to a year of volunteering or longer, and a minimum of 4 hours per month. We suggest that they spend that 4 hours in 2 monthly sessions with their mentee. Specific qualities that make good volunteer mentors: they're dedicated, reliable, kind, and open-minded. in order to qualify for our program and be enrolled as a volunteer mentor, they have an in-person interview, they complete an application, a child abuse check through DCFS, and a fingerprint background check. We also do a reference check. Additionally, once mentors go through that process and are accepted into the program, they agree to complete a mandated reporter training and are certified as mandated reporters of child abuse, and they commit to 2 to 9 hours of volunteer training annually. So match support, which is a very crucial part of any mentoring program. We do a lot of match support. We actually utilize anywhere from 1 to 3 interns to assist in providing match support to our matches. All of those interns are Masters of Social Work students. We match the youth in person at a mentoring match meeting, and if they're under 18, their parent is present. The program's interns contact the mentors at least 2 times a month via phone and email to provide support. The program coordinator contacts the mentees and parents, if applicable, monthly to provide support and get feedback. We also have a monthly newsletter that we send out via email that features a match of the month, group session information, outing ideas for the month, other community resources, and a disability awareness or disability justice video. If you see the photo at the bottom of the page, that's a mentor with his mentee, the ones where they're holding those framed certificates. They won the award for being runner-ups for the 2018 Youth Mentoring Match Impact Award through Mentor Illinois. This was very exciting for them, and the mentee in this match has become much more self-confident by receiving mentorship from a dedicated mentor with a similar disability. And that's everything that I have. If you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you so much for that. Let's
Thank
open
you.
it up to questions. No, absolutely. Benji, what questions do we have?
Great. The first question I have is, today you have to be able to use technology to learn and communicate and engage in many work activities, and assistive technology is especially valuable. How do you include this in mentoring, either in training mentors or making sure mentees are properly assessed and provided technology that's appropriate for them?
So at mentee enrollment, when they enroll as a mentee, we ask what accommodations that they need to fully participate in the program. We can also offer examples of accommodations because sometimes mentees and their parents may not even know what's available to them. Some, examples of things that are more obvious might be like literature in Braille or literature in large print. Also, there can be rooms where people can take space for themselves if they are overstimulated, if they identify with a disability that sometimes they may get overstimulated. So we make those things available to them. There really isn't anything that we wouldn't make available, but it's very crucial in the intake process and ongoing to have those conversations to make sure that all the accessibility needs are being met. At our group mentoring sessions as well, we provide a personal assistant that can help with if somebody needs help with drinking, eating, or toileting. That person is there to help out with that.
Great. How about one more, Benji?
Great. Alicia, how do you conduct match support with a mentee who has limited language skills?
Are you talking about somebody that's nonverbal or somebody that speaks a different language, or both? Or
I think both, but I think more nonverbal was the
nonverbal
gist of the question.
Well, every person has their own way of communicating, and so we've definitely had youth that are nonverbal that are in the mentoring program. Some of them do use assistive technology. They have computer systems that they can communicate with. And so that's a great, if they're set up with having one of those assistive technologies, that's a great way to communicate. Or a lot of people that are nonverbal can feel right. And so being able to just work at the level of what it is that they can do and communicate with them in that way. A lot of our nonverbal youth also will use email as a form of communication. So it's really just about learning that individual and, like it was said earlier, making sure that everybody is included and that we're meeting people where they're at and providing them legally the accommodations that they are entitled to.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Oh.
I think so. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, and thank you, Benji. And now I'm pleased to introduce you to Cindy. Cindy is a mom to Polly and also the founder of Teachability. Cindy, take it away.
Thanks, Cheryl, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my perspective as a parent of a 19-year-old with autism, depression, anxiety, and seizure disorder. I asked my son, Polly, if I could talk to everyone about our journey with his disabilities, and he agreed. In order to respect my son's privacy, I am not disclosing everything. I tell you this because there are some things that are just too painful to discuss or too embarrassing to reveal. In sharing our journey, I am leaving out some of the most important and the most stressful events because I want to respect his privacy. I'm sure I am not alone, so please remember that we are all scratching the surface when reaching out to youth and really anyone with a disability. Feeling uncomfortable is good for everyone. I'm protective of my son, but I've also learned that he knows more than me when it comes to his wants and needs. That's not an easy thing to realize as a parent. I too have to remember that my life is uncomfortable and letting go is uncomfortable. But it has also given Polly the confidence he will need as an adult. Seeing Polly have fun with his friends, learn from his mistakes, being uncomfortable and trying something new, and watching him surprise us all time after time has given me so much joy that it outweighs the fears of letting go. Self-advocacy and feeling uncomfortable go hand in hand and have been important to my son's development. I have so much to share and so little time to talk today, so I asked myself, what is the number one thing I want everyone to know? And the answer was surprisingly easy. Ask what they want. Don't set up a bowling party at 4 p.m. once a month with all the other mentees. What if they don't like bowling? What if they want to bring a friend from school? What if Tuesdays are a bad day? Give each and every student self-advocacy experience by asking them what they want, even if it makes them a little nervous or uncomfortable. Fun and laughs. Make it authentic and fun. People know when they're being pitied, and it's not a good feeling. There's nothing wrong with people with disabilities. Be real, try new things. Fun and laughs also help with the fear of the new and the unknown. When I try something new, I think of it as the first pancake. It's never good enough to eat, but it's a start. The discovery process is a time for youth with disabilities to learn what they don't like as much as it is about learning about their strengths and preferences. Another thing to consider is boundaries. Polly texts his mentors all the time. Be sure to make it clear what the rules are for your programs when it comes to texting. And I have to just mention a little aside, the mentor on the bottom right, Lamar, is a trainer and has worked with Polly, so he's been a mentor in a couple different capacities. And he said when he's not texted by Polly, that day's just not nearly as good, because I think Polly texts him almost every day. Unraveling the wrong ideas from well-meaning professionals. Well-meaning professionals, friends and family have over the years given me wrong ideas about what to do as a parent of a child with a disability. I remember Polly getting kicked out of preschool because he did not participate in circle time. When we found a preschool instructor who just had a good vibe and no training whatsoever, he thrived. I remember therapists telling me that my son would not do well in a sport unless it was a linear sport like golf or track. Polly played football without one modification, not one, on a team that eventually won the state championship. I remember a doctor telling me that he would outgrow his autism. I remember a neurologist asking me what medication I would like to give him for his seizures, and if I wanted to give him any medication at all. I remember teachers telling me that he needed to be in a special school or a special classroom, segregated from his typically developing friends. Polly got A's and B's in graphic arts and U.S. history with no accommodations and earned a 3.1 from the public high school, his home school. Most importantly, he has real friends. I am still working on unraveling many of the wrong ideas given to me by very well-meaning people. Sometimes it takes me a while to trust what people tell me. So remember, if a parent is not trusting you right away, please do not take it personally. Transportation and balancing the dignity of risk. One time, a policeman told me that the minute Paulie stepped on a train alone, he became a victim. But after we signed him up for travel training with the city of Chicago, he took the train to and from his internship here over at the top, Senator Durbin's office. Oh, that's the DC office, but he interned in the Chicago office, and that's his job coach and mentor. And he met him. He took the L. In Chicago, we call it the elevated train. It's the L. He took the L to and from and met Brendan, and they walked in the building together. He did that every time. Of course, I was terrified. I felt very uncomfortable. Balancing the dignity of risk with his safety is not easy, but it has to be done. I trusted the travel training program because I had a chance to talk with his teacher about the training process. So my recommendation is to let the parents understand the process of your program. It might help them learn to let go too. Be patient with them. It's not easy for us parents to trust. It can take time for parents of typically developing children to trust a child with a disability. I don't know why disability is so scary sometimes. Maybe because many of us had no experience with kids and classmates with disabilities when we were growing up. The more opportunities Polly had with his peers and their families without disabilities, the easier it was for them to become friends. Like friendship, mentorship for youth with disabilities must not be segregated. You are all part of the solution. Make your programs a fun opportunity for youth with and without disabilities to learn together. Ask what they want, include the family, and do things other than bowling. Do the things you didn't think could be done. Thank you for letting me share my story, and I hope it will help you with some of your own plans. I'm ready for questions. Oh, Teachability, this is my company, and we are working on teaching businesses how to be ready to bring these youth with disabilities into the workforce. And it's a very exciting time right now. There are a lot of businesses. We have a line of businesses waiting for our services because there are so many businesses ready to onboard adults with disabilities. So these skills of self-advocacy and social skills and work skills and going through the discovery process is very critical now. So yeah, I forgot about that slide. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Cindy. That was great. And let's open it up to questions. Benji, what do you have?
Cindy, you mentioned the importance of just this concept of inclusion and having youth who have disabilities be a part of the group with youth who do not have disabilities, who are all part of the same program. Do you have any advice for parents or mentoring programs working with the school in terms of helping youth who might be separated from others in the classroom?
Yes, I know as a parent, we can do a lot more because we don't have grants and we don't have all these rules that the formal programs have. So I would suggest going to your special education or resource teacher, and whether you're a parent or a staff member at a program, and talking to the people that work directly with your student one-on-one, and talking about what they like, what they don't like, and not really overthinking it, but just and sometimes all you just need is to let them know that they're welcome, invite them to come, and just kind of see what naturally happens with the peers. And then if there's somebody who's overseeing the project, can just be sensitive to that, and maybe you can find a brother or a sister of somebody with a disability and come in and talk about the person beforehand if they're nervous, or they could talk with them. Or, to me, the best thing is if the person with the disability talks about himself or herself. So I think there are a lot of kind of common sense ways to bring people and students with and without disabilities together in a very fun and natural way with the schools.
Great. How about one more, Benji, if you have it?
Great, Cindy. Do you have any suggestions for working or supporting youth with disabilities that are without a direct family and are living in foster care?
Could you repeat the question?
Do you have any suggestions for how to support youth with disabilities that are living in foster care?
I don't know anything about that, and I would not want to give the wrong answer. I would suggest going to the people with the formal training. So somebody like Janelle, or a place where Alicia works, I would completely go to a place where they have more experience.
Hey, Janelle, if you're on, did you have any resources or insight into that one, the youth with disabilities in foster care?
Thank you for that question. That's a really good question, and one with a lot of nuances, because youth with disabilities in foster care come with there's even more barriers and challenges. I would say one thing for sure is you'll want to be sure your staff is trained in trauma-informed practice. It's a very popular topic right now, and trauma-informed practice is something you can easily Google and find resources on. But youth with disabilities often experience trauma, and of course, every youth in foster care has experienced some form of trauma, just being removed from a home or placed in a new home. And so I would highly suggest that. And then I also would say that there are foster care mentoring programs, specifically programs that provide mentoring for youth in foster care. And I would suggest to talk to them about their best practices and training as well. And then if you combine those with some of the training and resources that from this webinar, that can provide some foundational information. The other thing I might suggest is some cultural competency training. In general, I think that's good. And then for youth in foster care too, cultural competency, because they're, youth in foster care are coming from a variety of cultural situations. So that would be my 2 cents. But I do agree that if you can speak directly with the folks who are working in the foster care system, you could get some additional really relevant information.
Perfect. Thank you, Janelle. And thank you, Benji. And to everyone that submitted questions, we appreciate that so much. So for program resources, we have some more information on mentoring youth with disabilities. Please check out the links listed here from our friends at Partners for Youth with Disability. These are some of the things that Janelle had referenced earlier, so please check these out. And to find out more about the organizations featured on the webinar today, please visit their websites. Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership scales impact by developing and supporting a national network of affiliates. These affiliates provide the leadership and infrastructure necessary to support the expansion of quality mentoring relationships. in local communities and statewide. Mentor affiliates also serve a unique role as a clearinghouse for training, resources, public awareness, and advocacy. We encourage you to find out whether your state has an affiliate in your region and connect with them to learn about the local resources and training opportunities. Additionally, we encourage you to register your program with the Mentoring Connector, which is a national database of mentoring programs. This zip code searchable database allows mentors and mentees from across the country to find your program and is connected to LinkedIn, NBA Cares, mentor.org.gov, and so many other avenues for free program promotion. Finally, check out the OJJDP National Mentoring Resource Center website for no-cost mentoring resources to help you apply evidence-based mentoring practices to your program. The OJJDP National Mentoring Resource Center provides evidence reviews on mentoring models and mentoring for special populations, implementation resources, from training manuals to mentor guides that are reviewed by the MMRC Research Board. Also, a blog featuring innovations and best practices from mentoring practitioners and the opportunity to request no-cost training or technical assistance. And as a reminder, 1 week after the webinar, all attendees will receive an email with a link to the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series webpage, where all the posts will include the recording, slides, and additional resources. Also, don't forget, we want your feedback. At the end of today's webinar, please answer this short survey and help us make this series even better. Be sure to visit the Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series page on the Mentor website for an archive of all the past webinars and additional information about upcoming webinars. Thanks to everyone for joining us today, and we hope that you will log on once again in August, on August 16th, for our next webinar on mentoring American Indian and Alaska Native youth. Have a great day.